Perek, same topic. What was taking place? So if you remember vaguely, because we did get sidetracked, we said the Kohen Gadol takes a shovel and takes off hot coals from the middle of the pyre on Yom Kippur and scoops them up and then puts them down like 4 steps out to outside the Heichal, if you remember, and places it down for later use when he has to go take the ketores, the incense, and the coals together into the Kodesh HaKadosh, into the Holy of Holies. Now the Mishnah is going back to that situation. And the first line of the Mishnah is going to be a little tricky. So let's begin. The Mishnah says, they, the famous they, the other Ganim, bring him out a ladle. The kap is the ladle, like a pan, and the shovel. Okay? Now here's the question. But he already did this. With regard to the Ketores, they already took care of the shovel. He already went ahead and scooped up the coals, and that was already over there, that shovel of gold. Remember on Yom Kippur, they didn't have 2 shovels, a silver shovel and a gold shovel. They only had a gold shovel, 1 gold shovel, which he already took care of. So what shovel are they giving him now? The Gemara right away, once we get to the Gemara, is going to ask this question. So at this moment in time, as we're learning this Mishnah, we don't even really know what this means. They take out for him the ladle and the shovel. We don't know who, what, when, and where, and why this is yet taking place. Let's keep going. Chofen, mole chofno, b'nosan l'toiv akaf. He does chanifa. What's chanifa? Scooping. Cup your hands together, and that's what he does. The Kohen goes in and cups his hands together and takes a handful of the ketores, of the incense, and then places it in to the ladle. The question is, where is he getting this incense to scoop up? Is it kept in a box? Is it kept on the floor? And he's scooping it up with his cupped hands and putting it into the ladle? So what's going on? And again, the Gemara is going to obviously address this. Hagodol lefi godlai, va'akotan lefi kotnai. The Kohen Gadol, whether he's big, or the Kohen Gadol, whether he's small, whatever his cupful size is, that's the shear. Right? And the Gemara, v'chein hoisa midasa, and that's the required measure. The required measure is simply a Kohen Gadol's cupped hands. That's the size and the amount of the ketores. Some people will have more, and some will be less, based on their physical reality. No, that's not our issue. Our issue here is simply maloi chofno, a filled up cupped hands. And what does he do with this? Then he takes the shovel of coals in his right hand, because a kaf is smiling the ladle of ketores into his left hand. And remember, what we understand here, it means he walks back to the place where he had originally put down the shovel with the coals, picks it up with his right hand with its long handle. In the left hand, he takes the ladle full of incense, and together he's carrying it somewhat from the Heichal all the way to the Kodesh HaKadoshim to deal with the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So this is very confusing because we know about this shovel of coals that's laying out by the Heichal from a previous Mishnah. So what is this shovel at the beginning of the Mishnah? Where is this coming in? Second of all, why the Mishnah goes out of its way to tell us the shovel of coals in the right hand, the ladle of incense in the left hand. Why? And what happens if I do the incense in the right hand and the coals in the left hand? Who cares? All he's doing is carrying it. So the Gemara again is going to have to tackle it. Says the Gemara. Zok the Gemara. Machta tonale. Concerning the shovel that the Mishnah already taught us. The Mishnah back on Daf 43b already taught us about this shovel of coals that he shoveled it up and he puts it down four plates into towards the Heichal. So says the Gemara, right? So the Gemara says, because it says like this, the Kohen Gadol takes his shovel and goes up to the top of the altar and he scoops up from the innermost coals that are the most hottest, and he descends. We already learned this halacha about the shovel. So what is this other shovel that was just brought in over here at the beginning of our Mishnah over here? Says the Gemara, awesome. Over there on Daf Mem Gimel Amid Beis on 43b, Hossam Machta to Gecholim. You're right. There we were talking about the shovel for scooping up, the golden shovel for scooping up the hot coals that are going to be needed to burn up the incense. Vahacha over here, Machta de Ketayres. We're talking about the shovel of incense. The Tanya, we learned, we bring to the Kohen Gadol an empty ladle from the chamber of utensils. And a shovel heaped with incense from the Avitas family chamber. Remember, Beis Avitas were those who prepared the Ketairis. So what happened was as follows. They would bring out from the Beis Avitas a shovel full heaped up with Ketairis. They would bring it to the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol would do Chanifa. He would cup his hands. And from the shovel that is holding this Ketairis, he would scoop up a cup handful of the Ketairis and put it into the ladle that they brought from the Lishchas HaKelim, from the chamber of the utensils. So this is what we're saying in our Mishnah. The first words of our Mishnah are, they would bring him out the ladle from the Lishchas HaKelim, the ladle in which he would put in the cup, the scoopful of incense of Ketairis. Where did he get the Ketairis to scoop up? From Esamachta, the shovel, which came from the Beis Avitas, full of Ketairis. And now he comes ahead and he scoops it up and puts it into the ladle. Okay, I hope that made sense. Okay, if it didn't, now's the time to ask. Now the Mishnah continues. He scoops up a cupful complete of incense, of Ketairis, and he puts it into the ladle. A big kohen according to his cupful, a small kohen according to his hand cup, and that's the measurement. Why is the ladle, and why did you need a ladle, a pan, at all on Yom Kippur? What Malay Chapna behavior? The Torah just says a cup full of finely ground Ketairis and bring it within the curtain, bring it into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. In other words, let the Kohen Gadol scoop up the Ketairis and carry it with his hands directly to the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Why do I need this extra step of him scooping it up from the shovel and transferring it to the pan, and then transporting the pan to the Kodesh HaKadoshim? So the Gemara answers a very interesting answer. because I got no choices. You're right. Theoretically, I didn't need that extra step of putting it into the ladle. I could have, the Kohen Gadol could have carried it in his hands, except Mishum Deloy Efsha, because otherwise it would not be possible for him to carry the Ketairis into the Kodesh HaKadoshim without a pan with his hands. The Heichinavid, how's he going to do it? Remember, he's not just bringing the Ketairis, he has to bring the hot coals. Don't forget the hot coals that he has to bring into the Kodesh HaKadoshim in order to burn and offer up the incense inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So do you want to say, nail v'hada nail, should he enter with the shovel of coals, then leave and come in again with a scoopful of Ketairis? That means the Torah HaKadosh only speaks about one coming in to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, to the Holy of Holies, not two coming in to the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So you cannot do this in two steps. So now you want to say, Nishkele the Ketairis b'chupno u'gatida l'machta ola u'le'elu. Should he take the incense in his cupped hands and place the shovel of coals on top of it and enter? So he should do a balancing act of a scoopful of Ketairis and put the shovel somehow on top of it, the hot shovel full of hot Ketairis, full of hot coals on top of it, and balance it perfectly and walk into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Because what's going to happen when he gets there to the Holy of Holies, to the Kodesh HaKadoshim? How's he going to perform the burning of the incense? Should he grasp the shovel in his teeth and place it down on the ground so that he may put the Ketairis into it, the Ketairis which he has it scooped up in his hands? So how's he going to get the pan off the top of on top of the Ketairis? He's going to have to lift it with his teeth, put it down, says the Gemara. Since before a regular flesh and blood king, you wouldn't do this because it looks ridiculous. According to the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, you certainly wouldn't do it. Therefore, it's not possible for the Kohen Gadol to simply bring the Ketairis scooped up in his hands. It's not possible. We do it like we find by the offerings of the Nesiim. The Nesiim which we had last week's Pasha and Pasha's Nasai. How did they bring it? They brought it. The Torah clearly says, Ketairis b'machteshes. They brought it in a ladle. They brought their incense that they offered in a ladle. So since we already have a place where you can see that you can carry Ketairis with a pan, Memela, that's what we do with regard to bringing it into the Kodesh HaKadosh, because there is no other way to do it. Okay, please tell me that made sense. I'm going to say, Charlie, good, okay, because it's not simple to put this down. Not unless hamachta b'yamin v'sakaf b'smol. The Mishnah continued, you put the shovel of coals in the right hand and the ladle, the pan full of Ketairis in the left hand. Okay, we're now on 47a2. Okay, so the Gemara says, Yitzvah ba'ara b'giyura b'shmei shamaya. Let me get this straight. The citizens are on the ground while the aliens are high in the heavens. So let me go find the Rashi over here because it's kedai to see it. The Rashi is giving us over here. Where is it? Okay. Where is the Rashi? All right. I can't find it, but here, if what it's saying over here is, this is a topsy-turvy thing. The Ketairis is the more holy. What are we offering up? We're offering up the Ketairis inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The coals are merely there to help with the offering up of the Ketairis. So the Ketairis is paramount, the coals are not. Says the Gemara. So therefore, you say now that the Ketairis, which is paramount, is going in the left hand, and the non-paramount, the coals, are going in the right. That's topsy-turvy. That's like a country that's more interested in its illegal immigrants than its citizens that it has. So in fact, my father's Rebbe, Rabbi Prague, mentioned, except in the United States today, where of course it is topsy-turvy, where the citizens are not as important as the illegal aliens that are coming in. That's exactly what the Gemara here is literally saying. And unfortunately, I can't find the Rashi at the moment, but it's there. Just give me a second. I'm going to see if I get. Why am I drawing a blank here? I think of the. All right, forget it. I don't want to get stuck here. So, in short, but that's exactly what it is. It's which tells you that once again our country is not thinking straight. Okay? In other words, the aliens are in the high heavens and the citizens are on the ground. Baita. Zumaruba. So says the Gemara, I'll tell you why we have it mixed up. That the Ketairis are in the left hand and the coals are in the right hand. Zumaruba v'sumoetes. The shovel of coals is more and the ladle of incest is less. So therefore, you need and the right hand is the stronger hand. Even when they are both equal, we don't make an exception to the normal case. Like the case of Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchi. Kimchi was his mother's name, which the Gemara will explain a little later why he's named after his mother. Ma'aseh the Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchi was a Kohen Gadol, who was so enormous that his ladle of Ketairis was greater than the coals that were shoveled up, and nonetheless he put the shovel in his right hand and the ladle in it, the shovel with the coals in his right hand and the ladle of Ketairis in his left hand. Zu chama because the shovel of coals is hot and the ladle of incense is cold, and you have more control with your right hand when you're a righty. Amru Alava Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis Shahayu Chayfen Arbas Kabim Meloi Choftav, that he used to scoop up 4 kabim of incense in his cupped hands. V'aymer, and he would say, Kol Hanoshim Zardu V'zeret Ime Ola Lagag. All the women received zarid, but my mother's zarid rose to the roof. The Gemara explains. Ikadiyami ba'arsa, that our zarid is like a cereal such as arsa. Ukedirava bar Yonason, like Rabbi bar Yonason that says the Amar of Rabbi bar Yonason Amar Rabbi Yechiel, arson yafa l'chayla. Arson is good for a sick person. The ikadiyamri b'shivcha zera, we're dealing with semen. Kidirabavur. The Rami, the pasuk says, "Ksiv etazreini chayu lamuchama." Shall gird me with strength for battle. The word over here, tazreini, is short. It's spelled without an aleph. The next pasuk says, "V'ksiv betazreini chayu lamuchama," with an aleph, with an extra aleph. Amad David of Nakadosh Baruch Hu Rebbeinu Shloim. Zerisani v'zeretani. What Hashem, David HaMelech said before, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you winnowed me and you girded me with strength. So the point was, he was saying like that either his mother had the great amounts of the cereal, or that Baruch Hashem, the best part of the semen, entered. And this, the idea being is, as we all know, there are millions of semens, only one gets through, and it gets propelled by its tail. Its tail is 95% of the entire semen. Nonetheless, the only thing that counts is the head of the semen, which is the only thing that enters and fertilizes the egg. And so that's what it's saying over here, is that with its great, what it called, that my mother was zoicha to greatness. And now the Gemara is going to explain why that was. Amru Allah Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis. They say on Rabbi regarding Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis. Once on Yom Kippur, listen to this, he conversed with a certain Arab in the market. In other words, for some reason, it was an Arab king was in the market. So when there was a break in the action between the first part of the Avodah and the second part of the Avodah on Yom Kippur, Rabbi Yishmael ben Kimchis had the need, for whatever reason, to go out and meet with this Arab king. And a drop of saliva sprayed from the Arab king's mouth onto Rabbi Yishmael's garments, thereby rendering it tamei, because we say the spit of a guy is at least certainly midrabanan, it's considered tamei. And his brother Yeshevav entered for the second half of the Avodah and served as Kohen Gadol in its stead. And their mother Kimchis saw two of her sons serve as Kahanim Gedolim on the same day. Vishuv Amru Allah about Shmuel ben Kimchis, Ham Achas Yotzav and Sipaim Odain Echad Vishuv. He went out again on Yom Kippur and talked to a certain lord in the market. And again, a piece of saliva flew out of his mouth onto Rabbi Shmuel's garments. Another brother, Vishimesh Tachtov, and he served under him. Tanu Rabbanan, famous Gemara. We'll talk about it. Shiva Bonim Hayula Le Kimchis. We're on 4783. There were 7 sons to Kimchis. The Kulam Shamshu V'Kuhuna Gedaila, and all of them served the positions of Kohen Gadol, not because one son died and then the next one took over, but because of the cases where one became Tamai and another son took over. What did you do, Kimchis, that you were zeicha to have so many sons that were Kahanim Gedolim? Amalahem, she said to them, Yoma, in all my days, Loiro Kaireis Basi Kale Sare. The beams of my house did not see the braids of my hair. My hair was always covered, even inside my house. Amrullah, they said to her, Harbu Asuke, many women do this. Veloy, and they didn't accomplish what you accomplished. So what's going on here? Let's stop for a couple of minutes and talk about this. The halacha, the ancient halacha, that a married woman has to cover her hair, okay, is only on the outside. Midir, it's only outside the house. Now, first things first, let's get something straight. Says Rav Moshe Feinstein, today in the Western world, a woman's hair is no longer an erva. Meaning that today, if you see a woman with her hair uncovered, you're allowed to make a blessing in front of her. Because theoretically, today, in the Western world, where the women do not cover their hair, everybody walks around with their hair uncovered. So if a Jewish woman does not cover her hair, that's fine because it's not an erva. It's not a that Ramosha does paskin that la halacha. Okay. Nonetheless, of course, Ramosha writes the Minhag Yisrael, the great Minhag Yisrael that goes back to ancient times, is that of course our women do cover their hair. Inside the house, there is no chiyuv whatsoever to cover your hair. A husband is allowed to see a wife's hair. Children are allowed to see their mother's hair. Nonetheless, from time immemorial, certainly I can picture my mother. I can picture today's generation far less, but I can picture my mother and certainly my grandmothers. right? They always covered their hair. Even in the house, they wore a snood or a kerchief, or whatever it is, a tinkle on their head. Nonetheless, you notice what the Gemara then says. Amrulai, harbu asukein v'loyot. Many women did this. In other words, the Gemara is already saying not all women, because you don't have to, and they didn't accomplish what you did. The Gemara is saying an extraordinarily important point here. Our service to the Rabbeinu Shalom is not transactional. Don't serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the idea that you're going to get reward. Serve him without the idea that you're going to get a reward. It does not work in a linear line that because I do the will of Hashem, so he's going to give me X, Y, and Z. That's not love. That's a transaction. That's saying, if I do what my parents want, they're going to give me a lollipop. That's the adult version of that. The Gemara is coming to clearly say, your job as a Jew is to do what's good and right, and that's what it is. Come what may, whatever it is, that's up to Hashem. But your job, what you're in control of, is to be the best human being that you could possibly be. That's what you're supposed to do. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of course, will reward. But he will reward each person to what they need, when they need it, how they need it, not by our wants, but by our needs, which, of course, he understands better than all of us. The reality of the covering of the hair, okay? This was much more, it stuck, the covering of the hair, much more coming out of Eastern Europe. To this day, if you go to Eastern Europe, you go to the Ukraine, and I have, or you go to Krakow or other places, not even Krakow, so that's already a city, but you go to Eastern Europe, you will see that the women to this day wear kerchiefs on their heads. If either the Goyish women, even the non-Jewish women. Certainly when they go into shul or a church or whatever, they cover their hair. Nonetheless, the more west you went, the more you went into Western Europe, into America, etc., that no longer exists. It doesn't exist, and that's why Ramoshe LaHalacha paskins. That's not an issue. That is not an issue. It's not something to go crazy about. Does that mean that we push away something that we have done as a people for thousands of years? Absolutely not. And Ramoshe himself writes that, right? One has nothing to do with it. There's the halacha, and then there is the way. Nonetheless, every family is different. Every family has their thing. Whether one's the best example of this is the best way to put this. When the Satmar Rav became Rav in Satmar, there were two shuls, the Ashkenazic shul in Satmar and the Hasidic shul in Satmar. So in the Ashkenazic shul in Satmar, he got up and used to say, the women should put on sheitlach. The women should cover their hair. In the Hasidic shul, he would say the women should take off the sheitels, the wigs, and they should put on only a hat. It was different strokes for different folks. This is very, 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 very typical of this kind of halacha. The other example, and a much bigger example for those of us who come out of Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Romania. The Chassam Sofer, the great Chassam Sofer, based on a Zohar, and probably for reasons of the mikveh, etc., ordained that women should shave their hair. Okay? By and large, for a while it may have stuck. I don't know, there are still Hasidim that do it. Nobody else does it. How do we get away with not doing it? Theoretically, if we who all come from that world, right, are under the gezerah of the Chassam Sofer. So it turns out that somebody asked the great Rabbi Yonasan Steif this question. He read a shidduch, he got a shidduch of a girl that's fine, beautiful, but she doesn't want to shave her hair. What should he do? And so the Rabbi Yonasan Shaif writes, even though the Chasam Sofer says you have, even though there's a Zoya that mentions this Gemara and explains this Gemara that she probably shaved the hair or whatever it is, nonetheless, he said, if she doesn't want to shave her hair and she's a good Jewish girl, not a problem. And that's what everybody hinges it on, because that's the way it is. We're going to bang into a lot of these Gemaras throughout Shas. You have to know the time, the place, the actual halacha, and the reality of the various worlds from which we all come from. So in other words, like everything else in life, there are variables in our approach. And that's the most important thing. We go further now. Back to, off the stories, back to the act of scooping up the Ketairis known as Chanifa. Tanu Rabbanan, Bekimtsai. It says regarding the mincha, remember the meal offerings, the grain offerings. It says he shall separate some of the grains with his kaimitz. He has to do kamitza. We still don't know what that is exactly. We're going to know now. Shalo yasa mida lekaimitz. That teaches us that he should not make a measure for the kaimitz. He shouldn't make a measuring cup. But in fact, he has to do kamitza with his hand. Ibayalu. Ma'u shiyatsa mida lechafnifa. What happens if the Kohen Gadol makes a measure equal to his cupped hands for Chanifa? In other words, he measures the volume of his cupped hands, and instead he uses a measuring cup. Hosam by the mincha by kamitza diksiv bekimtzai. He shall separate from it with the kaimitz. It says very straight out that you have to do kamitza with the hand. Right over here, it's not written he shall take it with his cupped hands. Ella, it says molei chofnov. He should take his cupped hands full of fine molei chofnov ketayris samim daka, of finely ground ketayris. It doesn't apply, and you can use a measurement equal to the size of your cupped hands. Or maybe we should make a Shava comparison from the word over here, Malay Chaftav, to the words by the Kimsai, where it says over there, Bimale, complete. Tashma, says the Gemara, and therefore that would mean you cannot use a measure just like you can't use it by the Kemitza. Tashma b'chaf oisa mitasa, and this is its required measure. My love, she'im rasa lasis mida oisa, meaning that whatever do you do for the measure, if you want to use a measuring cup, it would be okay. Says the Gemara, no. The Mishnah is coming to tell us, so too in this measure, would he again fill his hand with the incest inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So the Gemara says, what are you talking about? If so, you should learn from the Mishnah that the Kohen Gadol fills his hands with incest before going into the Holy of Holies, and then he fills his hands again from inside the Holy of Holies. In other words, how does he bring the incest into the Holy of Holies? In a pan. He scoops it into a pan. From here it would be mashma that in the Holy of Holies, he takes from the pan that he was holding and he re-scoops up with his hands the ketayris and offer it. Says the Gemara, Dilma Shem Ratzalasis Midaisa. The Mishnah means to say that if he wants to take a measure for Chanifa, he could make one. That's what the Mishnah seems to be saying. Inami We're now on 47A4. It means that he should not take more or less ketayris than the exact measure of his cupped hands. In other words, we do not know whether he should take a measuring cup for Chanifa or not. Now, we mentioned Kamitza before. This is how Kamitza seems to work. Look at your palm. Put it down like this, like as if you were about to put it into a bowl. And you get the 3 middle fingers. You cup them towards you. That seems to be Hanifa. You're spreading out your thumb and your pinky. The 3 middle fingers are scooped inside the grain, the meal, and you pull out whatever you can. The question is, do you stick your fingers in like this, straight in, and cup it inside the grain? Or no, do you make it a cup like this? You cup it before you put it in, and then you push your hand all the way into the bowl holding the grain, and whatever fills itself up automatically in there, and then you pull it out. Listen to the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan. Miloi kumsai. The kohen should have a full kaimitz for the mincha. Yachal mivayrits. It might mean that needs to be overflowing. That means overflowing outside your hands, and you would take your thumb and your pinky and sort of hold the overflow in. With this kaimitz, that means only whatever gets into those 3 fingers. Oi, big kumsai. It also says with these things. I might think you can do the kamitza just with your fingertips. So you do it like this, not the whole thing. It's disgusting stuff. I don't want to stick my hands in the grain in the meal. A full kaimitz. So this leads us that you scoop the kaimitz as people normally scoop a kaimitz. Okay, so how do you do it? Here we go. He closes his 3 middle fingers. So take your 3 middle fingers and close them over the palm of the hands and scoops up what it holds. So now, of course, it still doesn't tell us. Does this mean I simply stick my hand all the way in and whatever comes up? Or do I go like this, make a little cupping like this, stick it in and then complete the cup? Or do I stick it in straight and then cup from the inside? That I still don't have a clear picture. Okay? And if you look at the art scroll, it's telling us that on the Amid phase, we're going to discuss this. And that's exactly right, which we're now about to tackle. 47b1. 47b1. What time is it, by the way? I forgot to bring a watch. All right. We're running a little late, but it's okay. Here we go. Now, there are 2 kinds of minchas. A flat pan, picture a griddle, and a deep fry. And a deep fry pan, a deep pan. Some of which are baked, and some of them which were fried. Different kind of minchas. He smooths out the kaimitz with his thumb from on top and his little finger from the bottom, like this. Something like this. Okay? The zuhi avoida kosher shebimigdash. And this was the difficult service performed in the Beis Hamikdash, because many times they fried it. What happens when you fry something and then you want to pick it up? It gets crumbly. So you had to do it in such a way where it didn't crumble, and that was very difficult. So for the Gemara, Zuhi v'sulai, this is the most difficult avodah and not others. Va'ika malika, there's malika when you kill the bird with your fingernail, as opposed to a knife. When you shechti, when you and there's also chafina, which we said is extremely difficult because you had to carry the hot coals in one hand and the scooped up and the ladle of kataris in the other. So it says the Gemara he avoidus kosher shabimikdash. This is one of the hard ones of the avoidus that were in the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Boy Rabbi Shua ben Uzah. What happens to the kamitza that is trapped between the fingers of a full kaimitz? Is that part of the kaimitz or not? In other words, when I scoop it up, I've got my scoop. What happens to stuff that ends up in here? Amarapapa, the givai like violate what's inside the hand, what's caught between the fingers inside. No question about it. Kaimitsu. Divarai on the outside of the hand, the stuff that is sticking out, coming out on the outside of the hand, like the bayalach, the badi shirayamu, that it's only shirayim and it's not a problem. Ki to bayalach, the baini, where it's in between the fingers. It's in the between the fingers. It's not on the inside and not on the outside. What's the din? Rabbi Yochanan had the pashta Rabbi Yeshua ben Uzzah, and he explained it as follows. Vein abaynim is suffik ninu. Is a suffik. We have no idea what to do with it. So heichi of it. What do you do with these questionable particles of grain, of meal? First, you burn the kaimitz itself on the mizbeach, and afterwards you burn that was trapped between the fingers on the big pyre. That what was trapped between the fingers should go first. Maybe these are considered remnants; they're not part of the kaimitz. And then that would be no good, because that would mean the remnants would have become deficient between the kamitz and the burning of the kaimitz, because the rule is as follows: you could use the shirayim for whatever you want, only after you bring the regular kaimitz. And if the shirayim are destroyed or disappear or whatever before you actually bring the actual kaimitz, then the whole kamitza is no good. The Yoma shirayim shechasu ben kamitza leketara, remnants that become deficient between the kamitza and the burning of the kaimitz. Ein maktirin zaleim as a kaimitz. We don't bring the kaimitz for its sake. It's no good. The kaimitz is there to matter, to allow the remaining flour, the remaining grain, to be used for regular purposes. If that purpose is no longer there, then the whole kamitza is messed up and has no purpose. Let's go a little further here. Just what do you call it? Because there's one. We're almost done. 47b2. Iachi hashtanami. Now too, the particles of the doubtful status of those grains that got caught between the fingers of the kamitza. I could argue. Ikri kan. Say over here the principle. Kol shemimenu leishim areu b'bal takriru. Anything which is placed on the mizbeach's fires are subject to the issa not to burn any remaining part on the altar. That means once part of it has been offered properly on the mizbeach, then any remainder is forbidden to be burned on the mizbeach. If that's the case, how could you burn the shirayim on the mizbeach? Since they might actually be shirayim and don't belong to be burned. And for the Gemara, Charlie, just hang out for literally one more minute, because it's a very interesting, a funny part that's coming up. We're just getting straight to the end. You're right. You have in mind to burn these questionable, in between the fingers, grains. You send as for the sake of firewood. You could, for a sacrificial intent to have a good smell, you're not allowed to offer it because it may not be what it is. So says the Gemara, that's going to Rabbi Lezer. What do the Rabbanan say? If something that's possibly worthy to be eaten is not allowed to be used for firewood because it's baltashris, it's what you call wasteful. What are you going to say? What do I do with this thing? And for the Gemara, Amar Amari, the Kamse Shemene, Elamai, only fat Kahanim should perform the Kamitza. Good old fat Kahanim whose fingers are so fat that they stick together and nothing gets in between them. Now that you have arrived at this answer that we only use fat Kahanim, Rabbi Eliezer, Nami lechatchila dekamshi shemena. Even according to Rabbi Eliezer, he'll agree that lechatchila in the first place, let's only use fat kahanim. No, if you don't use a fat kohen, you can bring it for firewood. But let's stick to fat kahanim. And with this, we end today's Gemara. So we're on 47b3. That's why I wanted to say it's always good. Here's the situation. Sunday morning, and I'm not going to be able to make the shiur because I have a bris that I have to go to. One of my mechutanim had a grandson, and so I feel compelled. I got to go to the bris. So I don't mean to blow you guys off. So we got to do 2 daf in here. So we're holding at the bottom. Shabbos' daf is Mem Ches 48. Okay, give me a second. So it's a short daf because if you look at Mem Ches on the base, it's a short daf. Yes, there's a lot of types to this, and Charlie's going to say there must be something difficult. It's true, but anyway, so finish to the bottom for Shabbos. Finish to the bottom of Mem Ches on the base. Okay, and then Sunday's daf is Mem Tes 49. 49. We're going to go to, okay, until, give me this, find the spot where to pick it up. Hang on a second. 49. Boy, it's all one long thing. That's a big problem. Okay. I hate to do this to everybody, but you got to go to 50A1. Oh, no. Back up further. Give me a second. I'm trying to see. Hang on. Let me see over here. No, 49. Okay, here we go. 49B1. On 49B1, it says in the art scroll, you'll see over there in the left column, the last words are Iboya Lahu, Shochat V'meis. If the Kohen Gadol slaughters his chatas bull, but dies before going into the Holy of Holy and spraying the blood, what's the halacha? So if you see that, that's on 49B1, right as we're going into the right column. The last words on the left column going into the right column, that's where we're going to pick up. That's where we're going to pick up the Gemara on Monday.